The next thing I love is when men beg. Why were there so many balls? Never thought I would see the day when Sabetha, obviously my wife, interacted with Patience, my other wife. I just need someone to slap me vigorously, and I mean vigorously, with this book. That one was crazy. That one was really crazy. That one was really, really crazy. Oh. This is somehow even worse than what I thought. Wait, this is all the crack is right at the end, like all the Of course, you know Amanda wrote this. It's going to be vulgar. Hey, Mungu bariki wengine. He was doing lines of crystal meth on a stripper's. Hello everyone, today I will be doing a book review of The Republic of Thieves, which is the third book in the Gentleman Bastard sequence by Scott Lynch. The first book is The Lies of Locke Lamora, and the second book is Red Seas Under Red Skies. Now, I have not read any of these first two books. Will I be reading them? Most likely. However, I did stumble upon this book in one of my favorite bookstores, Prestige Bookstore. It is located in CBD, in case you guys want to check that out, and in case Prestige you want to send me free books, I'm always available. This book is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. I rate books solely based off of vibes, so I may or may not be exaggerating how good this book is. Without wasting any more time, let us get right into the plot of this book. The plot follows a hot thieving prodigy named Locke Lamora and his equally hot, slightly less thieving prodigy and more muscle, Jean Tannen. And it begins when Locke Lamora is dying. You know, he's on a bed. I assume he was poisoned in the second book. I have not read it. I have not seen it. And so I did not even Google it. I was, as I said, vibes. So Locke Lamora had been poisoned, and Jean Tannen was trying and failing to get some sort of help. Alchemical help, of course, from physicas, which are basically, you know, high fantasy lingo for doctors. And right off the bat, you know the author wants you to think Jean Tannen is hot. Right off the bat, because for one, he is big, he is strong, and he walks around with knives. The second a character walks around with knives, you know that they're just to be hot. They are absolutely there for no reason at all than to just thirst trap the ladies, because the ladies love the knife-wielding men. And honestly, I do not blame them. I also love the knife-wielding men. And I would even go as far as to say I love the knife-wielding women as well, because have you seen my girl Inej? No. So the plot follows the both of them at the beginning when Locke is poisoned and they're trying to figure out what to do, and eventually help comes in from an unexpected source, which is the Bond Smaggy. The Bond Smaggy, I know it's Bond Smagai because it's supposed to be Bond's mage. The Bond Smaggy are basically mages, but they don't really do magic to help people or teach. They take black market contracts from humans to do killings and genocide here or there, you know, ethnic cleansing. And so they get, you know, hired by the Bond Smagai to go and rig an election. The second I saw this part of the plot, I was sold, because as no one is surprised, we have just come from, well, technically it was a year back, an election ourselves in my country, which is Kenya. I'm saying this hoping someday somebody from another country will watch this. There's pretty little chance of that. However, immediately I saw people being hired to rig an election, I was like, art imitates life. And now I had to read it. I had to continue. And when I tell you, every time I read this book, I don't know whether to say I sobbed a little, because I was like, oh my God, you look so familiar. Are you my dad? But the dad in question is my country and the rigging of elections. So the Bond Smaggy want them to rig an election, which happens every 5 years actually, when art imitates life. And they're going to be paid money, obviously, and they're going to heal Locke from this poison which nobody else can heal, surprise, surprise, except the Bond Smagai. And they have no option but to accept. Now, early from the get-go, the characters are arranged in a sort of sequence that is not a surprise to anyone. We have the hot criminal prodigy Locke Lamora. We have his hotter best friend, who is not so much a criminal prodigy but like a muscle, Jean Tannen. We have the even hotter Sabetha, who we'll get to her later. We have the mommy, who is Patience. Patience is the Bonsmage who comes to give them their contract and tell them what they need to do. And right off the bat, you feel that the author wants you to think, oh my god, this is not even mother, this is my mother. Except she could kill me anytime. We have a character named Chains, who is supposed to be the father. And we have two, I don't even know what to call them. I do not even want to remember their names. I'm calling them Ron Weasley 1 and Ron Weasley 2. Because they were only there to make us laugh and they were twins. And the plot follows all of these characters. It really jumps back and forth between the present, which is Locke Lamora and Jean Tannen trying to rig the election, and the past, which is the life story of Locke Lamora when he grew up in a slum and how he was mentored by this older man named Chains into becoming the criminal prodigy that he is. I should mention, the world building of this book is set up so that the thieves, as they steal because it's their form of worship. As I mentioned in my previous video, they serve the 13th god, who is the nameless god, and you serve him by stealing. And when Patience comes and gives Locke and Jean the little contract to go rig the election, Jean is like, we know you're lying to us, there's something you're hiding, and surprise, surprise to no one, the thing being hidden was the fact that the other side, who are other Bonsmagi who have also decided they also want to rig the election in their favor, have hired Sabetha. I feel like I've not explained why they're rigging elections. Basically, the Bonsmagi don't really interact with human beings, and they don't really interfere, is the word, with the daily dealings of men. But the way they interfere is by rigging elections so that whichever party they support comes into power, and then their ideologies are brought forth. So they sort of interfere without interfering, very much like the UN in third world countries. And so we have Sabetha working for the other side, Locke Lamora and Jean working for this side, and Locke Lamora is in love with Sabetha. The only thing better than a hot man is a hot man who broods over an even hotter woman who is way smarter and out of his league. Because this man broods. This man grovels. He was on his knees the entire book, and I loved it. There is no experience like it. So the minute he's told, obviously, that Sabetha is going to be working for the other side, he's immediately like, yes, I'm going to do it because I need to see the love of my childhood life. And so they heal Locke, obviously he nearly dies, you know, all that jazz with the poison being horrendous. And they are moved from this little city where they are to the city of Carthage, which is where they are going to perform the rigging of the elections. Now, the things that I loved about this book, the first is murderous women, because obviously you know that is the first thing I look for in books. It started off a bit slow before Patience, you know, sort of swooped in and saved the day. But then after, we had Patience being murderous. We had Sabetha being a criminal prodigy, even more so than Locke Lamora. And it just, I lived for those interactions. And so when Sabetha and Patience met somewhere in the book, my mind was blown, because you know these books by male authors will never ever have two women talking when it's not about a man. And either way, Sabetha and Patience were still talking about Locke, so I don't know if it passes that really smart test where you have two women in any piece of media talking about something that isn't a man. The next thing that I loved was the world building. This book really delved into the world that is Locke Lamora's little thieving circle. I don't know what to call this world. Carthage, and of course, what was the other world called? Camorra. The world building, insane. He really goes into the nitty-gritties to give you the details. Sometimes overbearingly so, because the characters could be walking down a bridge, and then the author just delves into a 2-page, I don't know what to call it, monologue on the origins of the bridge and how it got built, and how it's such a wonder and such a mystery, and it dragged the story a lot of times. However, when it wasn't dragging the story, it was actually really interesting. It put me in the minds of hot characters, which is honestly all that we're here to do. The next thing that I loved, surprise to no one, was the rigging of elections plot, because there's nothing that I love more than experiencing something that I am experiencing in real life, you know. So when Locke was busy, you know, spreading lies, spreading propaganda, and giving gifts to woo voters, I felt as though I was extremely immersed in the story. You know, I felt as though I was living in a country where a presidential candidate promised us the world, and now we have to pay 1,000 shillings to get an ID, which is proof of citizenship. So it all together wrapped up really beautifully. The next thing I love is when men beg. Because who doesn't love when men beg? Especially not just begging, when they grovel, when they forget self-respect and all they want is to beg and to be diminished. I love it. Now, oh, the last thing I liked was there was a play within a play. Now, I at heart am a lover of set books, and my favorite set book was the Caucasian Chalk Circle. I think I have it somewhere. Where is it? Where is my copy of the Caucasian Chalk Circle? A, B, C, A, B, C, C, oh, there. I still have my copy of the Caucasian Chalk Circle, which was a set book that we basically, hey! I have just opened this and found a picture of me from high school. Jump scare. I should blackmail all these people with this picture, because the only person who is actually serving any look here is the guy who is standing behind this camera. Ooh. We did this as a set book, and it had this little play within a play and a crooked judge, and we had sort of the same vibe going on here, where in the past we see that Locke and his friends had to pretend to be actors when they were learning their trade, and so they had to act in a play. I really love that aspect. Although, however, when they were actually acting out the play, too many things were happening in the present for me to be bothered, so I have no idea what happened in that play. I know who the characters were, but I don't know anything that happens except somebody dies. Other than, of course, the fact that Locke got to kiss Sabetha, which brings me to the things I didn't like. You will never have a book written by a man that doesn't have incest. I want to get real close to you when I say this. You will never have a book written by a man that doesn't have some sort of incest or some sort of incesty undertones. And if it doesn't have incest or incesty undertones, it will have a sort of sexual relationship that is frowned upon morally. And lucky for us, we had two of those things. Or at least I felt like we had two of those things. The first one was the fact that when Locke and Sabetha were going into this new place whilst they were pretending to be actors, they had to pretend to be cousins. It was part of a whole heist thingy. So they pretended to be cousins who were acting in a play together. However, in the play, they were supposed to kiss. So everybody in the audience, everyone around them except their immediate friends and the people in the acting company, think these two are cousins, and we're just okay with them kissing. I found that a bit odd. And it made it even odder that at some point, when someone wanted to bring forth his suit to Sabetha, he asked Locke first, with the notion that Locke was Sabetha's cousin, whether Locke himself had brought a suit forth to Sabetha. It wasn't as bad as some of the things we've seen, but it was a bit... And of course, the second one is, you know, an intimate relationship between someone whom I thought was a minor and someone whom I thought was an adult. Now, the author doesn't say this expressly. However, I am aware that Jean Tannen, Locke, and all their friends are in around 16, 17, 15. And when they go to this acting company, the actors there should be around late 20s, early 30s. So when Jean gets with this woman who, when I first read the book, thought was around mid-30s, when he should be 16, 17, I was a bit shocked. However, I may be wrong. I didn't read too closely to it. It could be that Jean, not Jean, the other woman, Genora, was maybe younger, and I just didn't read between the lines that well. Now, you know that a book written by a man will also not be a book written by a man unless you have a woman going topless. That of course, and the main male character being brainless. And not only that, but the main male character being brainless and his friend being muscular, because Locke Lamora was not as smart as I am making him out to be. At least I felt like he wasn't. Maybe the author wanted us to think he was, but that boy could not succeed in a singular heist against Sabetha. Sabetha was on this level and Locke Lamora was on this level in terms of planning and execution. And the only reason Locke Lamora ever won is because he just refused to lose. You know, sometimes you don't have to win, you just have to make sure the other side doesn't win either. So then both of you guys lose. And it did not surprise me at all when we had a topless scene from Sabetha. I was not at all surprised. I know you're asking yourself, how can you have a topless scene in a book? You can, because the writer expressly stated that Sabetha was topless. I mean, even in the book, it wasn't done gratuitously so that it was like, oh, you have to be topless. Locke acknowledges the fact that it's going to be uncomfortable, and we have to hand it to him. Locke, thieving genius, general genius, handsome, smart, amazing hair, can pull all the ladies, and a feminist. He is a feminist. He was ticking all the boxes. I want to speak to Scott Lynch directly when I ask this. Why were there so many balls? I don't even feel like that question needs an explanation. Just why were there so many balls? Especially in the beginning. It felt like every page I turned, balls, balls, balls. Why? Feel free to interpret that however you will. I also found it crazy that there were a lot of modern words being used when the story itself was set in not like a similar time. You know, when you're reading, it's like that one scene in Game of Thrones that had like a coffee cup. That's exactly how some of these odd little words felt, because there was coffee in the books. At first I was like, it's not too bad, but then the character's obsession with coffee made me feel as though the author himself is obsessed with coffee and he was just writing about himself. And then there was the use of words like glib. Now, I found out what glib meant like 2 months ago, and now I see it in every other page. I didn't think glib was a word. I don't think it is a word that's that commonly used. However, again, my vocabulary, that intonation was crazy. My vocabulary is pretty limited, so I can't really say that I have the best interpretation of what words fit and which words did not fit. This one is crazy. You can tell when an author is really trying to be inclusive, because all the characters who were supposed to be black or dark skinned, I think they were called night skinned. And the first time I read it, when he was like, they were talking about someone and they were like, he was night skinned, I was like, is this some secret power? Is he like a demon? Is he going to summon something from the darkness? No. He was just black. He was just black, guys. And that surprises absolutely no one. Another thing that I did not like was that there was too much world building. Sometimes I just want the two main characters to passionately make out, except they can't, because right in the middle of it, boom, you spring another scene of some random thing happening that absolutely did not need to happen. The last thing I did not like that falls in line with world building is, why were there so many odd names? I understand the magic system is built into the names, which is something I saw in Skullduggery. So you'll be born, when you are born, you will have your real name, should I call it, the one that your parents sort of give you. It's the name that's attached to your soul. It's done differently in Skullduggery, but this is how I understood it here. You have that real name that's attached to you. So the Bonds Magi, they don't name their children, because if you name them, that becomes their real name. And then you have a name that you pick up over the years so that you hide your real name. That's called a grey name. So your real name in this book is called a red name, and the fake one is called a grey name. The problem with the red name is you can't be controlled by it. If someone learns your real name, then they can use it to manipulate you, to take control of your brain, befuddle it and whatnot, which is a theme I also saw in Skullduggery. The only difference is in Skullduggery Pleasant, when you're born, the name your parents give you, it's not your real name. Your real name is written in the book of life, ironical, and when someone finds it, they can also control you. So most of the time when people get out and about into the world of mages and wizards, they pick a false name. So you'll probably have the name your parents gave you when you're born. your real name and the false name you pick when you start running around with the wizards. Overall, I loved this book. Despite all of its minute shortcomings, I absolutely loved this book. I was so invested in the characters and the story, and I was pleasantly surprised because I picked this book from the crack of the heavens. Honestly, I cannot tell you what drew me to this book except its cover, and I thought I would have to force myself to like it, but I didn't. I was actually pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed this book, so I will give this book 4 stars, 4 out of 5 stars. It is my favorite book, one of my favorite books of the year, and definitely my favorite book of the month. With that being said, thank you guys so much for being here. I will see you guys next week, hopefully in the next vlog. Bye.